to our press preview. Then in the next half hour, we'll see what's making the newspaper headlines with TV presenter Kay Adams and The Sun's political editor Tom Newton-Dunn. Evening to you both. Let's take a look at some of those front pages, all of them in fact. The Daily Mail's front page featuring the families of 3 schoolgirls who travelled to join Islamic State. They said the police were to blame for the girls leaving the country. The Mirror leads with the suspension of presenter Jeremy Clarkson after a fracas with a Top Gear producer. Jeremy Clarkson also on the front of the Metro, which says Sunday's episode of Top Gear won't now be shown. The Sun's front page says Clarkson denies any violence, but says the rest of the series has been cancelled. And the Daily Star's front page also features that story, different headline. The Independent leads with evidence from the Hillsborough inquest where the policeman in charge of the match admitted he wasn't the best man for the job. The Times says dementia clinics are being overrun with worried well patients who fear they have the disease but may simply be absent-minded. The Guardian has new figures which show the number of unemployed young people from ethnic minority backgrounds has risen by almost 50% since the last general election. The Financial Times says David Cameron has asked ministers to see whether Britain's intelligence budget can be counted as defence spending to help the country meet NATO obligations. The Telegraph's front page features proposals for a new curriculum for life to help children cope in the internet age. The I newspaper says patients are facing a fresh shake-up of the NHS, with more treatments set to be offered outside hospitals. And the Daily Express claims scientists are close to finding a vaccine to cure diabetes. So let's bring in Kay and Tom, and it's on the front of most of the newspapers. So let's start with Jeremy Clarkson. Kay.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting that the Mirror's headline is much more po-faced than some of the other headlines, you know, which have been, you know, strop and bop and stop and, you know, kind of puns on Top Gear, whereas they're taking a much more straight-laced view. You know, Clarkson suspended after punch-up. You know, earlier on it was allegations, and it's still obviously an allegation that he has punched one of his producers. It is the story that is doing the rounds very much. They have a little bit more detail. Again, allegations that he punched a producer because he didn't get his dinner on time. We do not know the truth of this. This is what they are reporting. They're saying Jeremy saw red over a catering issue. He just snapped. I find it interesting that he just snapped, because we will find out what happened in due course. But you know, clearly he has been butting heads with the BBC on a fairly regular basis over the last 2 years. You know, to be an amateur psychologist, he doesn't look like a happy man to me. And that line, he just snapped. You just think, what's
almost
been...
millions of pounds of fast cars to get
Money doesn't
miserable.
always make you happy, Tom. It doesn't always make you happy.
He apparently was on his final warning after a series of hiccups, shall we call them, along the line.
Yeah. Final warning. The BBC made that quite clear. And there's so many different dramas going on with this. It's a generally an intriguing story. Jeremy Clarkson's a Marmite kind of person. You know, everyone has a view on him. You either like him or you hate him. I think probably more people like him than hate him. The director of BBC, Danny Cohen, doesn't like him, and they clash bitterly. There was the Argentina episode where he created a riot by agitating over the Falklands Top Gear, say entirely unintentionally. Then, of course, the racism row, whether Jeremy Clarkson or not said the N-word on a Top Gear programme. That's why they beep on their final warning. To me, you smack someone in the face because they don't bring you your dinner in time, kind of feels unlikely. There was obviously more to it, tensions building, whatever. Clarkson in our paper tonight denies hitting anybody, or a source close to denies hitting anybody. And who knows, it's possible he's getting ever more reckless because he wants out.
In any organisation like this, I mean, surely you have to have fairness, and it has to be one rule that applies to everyone. So whenever they find out what did happen, then the rule that they have to apply is the same rule that they would apply to someone who works in the BBC canteen, somebody who works in graphics or whatever, and not make an exception for the fact that this is Jeremy Clarkson. He is a cash cow, there's no two ways about it, and he does have a huge amount of support. He's a very popular guy, but an organisation, I would imagine, like the BBC, cannot be swayed by that.
I think that the problem is that he does work for the BBC, and the BBC, like it or lump it, they do have to live by standards higher than other broadcasters, simply because A, they're funded by the taxpayer, and B, they are seen as, you know, probably wrongly, as, you know, the pinnacle of everything right and proper in the country. So the broad BBC and Clarkson, it hasn't been a happy marriage for years.
You also have a duty to your employees. You know, if you're working within an organisation like that and you happen to have a disagreement with another colleague, you know, the fact that your employer might sanction them smacking you in the face is just untenable.
But, so nothing's been proved. Who says
absolutely.
He did? Although he's the only one suspended. The producer who allegedly got smacked hasn't been suspended, which is slightly silly.
These are allegations, absolutely.
It's such a cash cow, I think, was your phrase for the BBC. I mean, can they afford to act on their principles?
Well, football is the other industry that's had to face these kind of dilemmas, haven't they, with various individuals behaving very badly and clubs, you know, clearly tortured over whether or not they do the right thing or they do, you know, the commercially viable thing. And there you go, you have to set your own standards and you have to live by them. So we will find out.
We will, but it's not on Sunday. There's been a discussion about what should replace it, hasn't there, by Clarkson and
Clarkson
Hammond
himself
and May.
is leading this on Twitter with Hammond and May, talking about their favourite war movies which should be screened instead.
Last of the Summer Wine.
Very brief defence of Jeremy Clarkson.
I think.
I like him. I know him a little bit. I think he is a force for good. He's done extraordinary amounts of, raised huge amounts of money, millions and tens and hundreds of millions of pounds for wounded troops. I think TV would be the lesser if he was to disappear from our screens.
Okay.